Let's continue talking about World War One here. World War One was a new kind of war for the world. In the past, we had these battles where large armies would line up facing each other and take shots at each other. If you've ever seen movies like The Patriot about American Revolution or war movies related to the Civil War in the 1860s, you have a lot of uh, soldiers on foot, you have the horses. But this is a war you start to see a transition. You still have the horses, but you start to see a mechanized war, and it looks totally different, and it's devastating to the world. So World War One, a new kind of war, all these new technologies, new types of warfare, they led to this massive destruction on a scale that had never been seen before. So you've got a couple different things here to think about. You've got poisonous gas, you got trench warfare. Both are hallmarks of World War One. When you type in these things, this is the war that comes up. There's two different kinds of poisonous gas. There's chlorine gas, which I think burns from the inside out, and mustard gas, which burns you from the outside in. The systems of trenches spread across Europe. The new movie, 1917, shows great trench warfare. So if you're looking for a movie to stream, 1917 is the movie to go with. There's millions of Allied and Central Power soldiers in the trenches during on the Western Front. These fronts that they'll talk about, it's where the battle lines are. So they get stalemated, so they have time to build trenches. So we have a Western Front and an Eastern Front. And the Western Front is where you see these trenches. Trench warfare, not a new idea. Lots of times people dug trenches, dug foxholes, hid behind mounds of earth, but the scale of the trench system had never been seen before. Life in trenches, horrible. You're living there constantly. Rain, deep puddles, mud, the lice, the rats, bad sanitation, not removing the bodies because they're up right above the trenches. You stick your head up there, you're going to get it shot off. So you get these bodies just rotting up there. Again, that 1917 movie does a really great job of showing that sort of stuff. So what had happened is you'd be in your trench, and then the soldiers were ordered out of their trench with whistles over the top, and they'd sprint up over the top of the trench through no man's land, over the barbed wire. Thousands of people kind of die, get cut down by enemy guns. This is when we get machine guns. You've got you need the gas mask for the gas. You've got high explosives. You've got tanks. You've got flamethrowers. All sorts of fun stuff. So, and the aircraft. So the tanks, they can cut across this rough terrain. The aircrafts, they can machine gun you. They can drop bombs, but they're really great at observation. So you get things like the Red Baron. This is when he comes out. The dog fights. Airplanes just got invented, and now we're using them for this war. So on the home front, both in Europe and also in America, eventually, when we join the war, you see governments really talking about what's going to happen and getting their people behind the war, because this is a total war where civilians are being targeted, and cities are being targeted, and bombing and all that sort of stuff. So factories shift to military equipment. Civilians conserve food. This is where you get these things called victory gardens, where people plant their own food. We're talking a lot about them today with the COVID-19 stuff. And the government starts to really crack down on people so they can control information. So you see a lot of propaganda posters and pamphlets and articles about how horrible the enemy is to encourage the people to fight up against them. Women get really involved in this war. This is the war that actually ends up spurring women's rights movements around the world and the right to vote in the United States and Europe, particularly England. So millions of men are at battle. So what happens to the home front? Women have to do all sorts of work. They have to work in factories. They serve as nurses. And it transforms how women are seen in the world, and it helps win them the right to vote. So here's this Western Front area. You got a front that runs all the way from the north in Belgium all the way down to Italy, and the when Italy joins in May of 15, you start to see this front really set up and a lot of really big battles, but almost no progress. You're really stuck on these lines. There's the Battle of Verdun is considered one of the deadliest battles ever. 400,000 French casualties in 10 months, and just as many or almost as many in Germany. So that's a big battle. It's a fortress battle. The Battle of the Somme is another famous one. Both sides, great losses. The British suffered 60,000 casualties on one day. All right, this word I can never pronounce. I think it's yipes. It could be the yipers, but I think it's the Y is the yipe. This is a failed French offensive in 1917. It's in Belgium, and there are several battles on the same spot. After 3 years, nothing changes. The lines are just about the same as they were. So we call this a world war for a good reason. We have bad fighting all over the world. 30 nations take place in the war, or take part in the war. The Gallipoli campaign in Turkey is considered one of, or it was the Ottoman Empire, today it's Turkey. It's considered one of the massive, powerful battles of the war. That's the Australian soldiers that really go in and fight for this fort and this spick of land called the Dardanelles. Uh, they eventually push in. It's a suicide mission kind of thing. It's kind of amazing, but the Australians eventually kind of end up winning this, but after 200,000 people die. This is when Lawrence of Arabia, another great World War I movie, if you'd like to watch long, but Lawrence of Arabia, great movie about the Arabs rising up to overthrow the Ottoman Empire and forming countries like Iraq and Iran and Turkey. The Armenian Massacre, another part of this. This is kind of the Holocaust for Armenians. This is near the Black Sea. Russia launches an attack on the Caucasus and ends up killing ethnic Christian Armenians. There's a lot of messages coming in my phone. And this is that you see a lot of people, about 600,000 Armenians die during this massacre with starvation. It's considered a genocide. Genocide is the destruction of a racial or political or cultural group. And we will talk a lot more about that when we talk about the Holocaust during World War II. Other fighting around the world happens in Asia and Africa. Japan will join the war on the side of the Allies and declare war on Germany. You've got Allied colonies scattered throughout the world because of imperialism, and those Allied forces in these countries like India are fighting on the side of the Allies, and they hope that because they're fighting on the side of the Allies, that they will get their independence after the war is over, and we know that that doesn't happen. It'll take till after World War II for that to happen. So here's your great map here from 1915 to 1917. We showed you the 1914 map. One of the questions on the quiz is to compare them, and you can see there's a lot to compare, meaning they look almost exactly the same. These battle lines are set. They are stalemates. Nobody is moving, and the war is dragging on. We are going 14, 15, 16, 17. We're at year 4, and millions of people are dying. That is the end of this show, and we will talk a little bit more about the end of the war and the Russian Revolution as we move forward.